guys, welcome back to my art channel. If you're new, hi, I'm May, and today we're going to be looking at how to make marbled cells on IbisPaint. I make digital fluid art and digital pour art with cells, and yeah, if you don't have the program already, you can download it on the App Store for free for iOS and Android devices. And if you already have the program, let's get started. So once you have IbisPaint open, we're going to start with a canvas of 2400 by 1680, which is about 4 by 2.8 inches with 600 DPI. And we're going to hit OK and shrink our canvas down so we can see all the edges, like so. And today I figure we do a black, kind of a neon blue, teal, tan, and white color palette. Feel free to screenshot the screen if you'd like to follow along exactly. Otherwise you can pick whatever color palette you like. And the brush I decided to go with today is charcoal. Let's see what kind of patterns it comes up with. So before we can make our marbled cells, we're going to have to create our digital pour image with our brush. And we'll start with a black background. I like to do it on a second layer, so that way if I want to edit it further, it makes it a little easier. Like so. And then always check to see if your brush too has any size limitations. Sometimes the pixels here will be set around 100 or 300 or 500 as a preset. So all you have to do is when you're in your brush, go to settings and turn your maximum thickness all the way up. And then as you see, you will not have any size restrictions on your brush. I'll start laying down our neon blue. Like so. Do some halfway and some all the way down. And then we'll do the reverse with the tan. Kind of have it meet and go all the way up. And kind of halfway. White. And fill in those spaces. And we're going to layer quite a bit of black. So I want this bit of a darker piece so you can see the marble pattern show up on those cells. So we'll overlay quite a bit of the black over top. Like so. Starting to look pretty trippy. We're going to go into our filters. And I have a more in-depth tutorial on how to create a digital pour image in my tutorials playlist that you can watch. Otherwise, we'll kind of get started here. Start playing with our filters. Might want to add some more black. So if when you're pulling your colors, if you find it's not quite how you like it, you can always go back in or just hit back and add some more color. A little bit more of that teal kind of pop through. I'll just do some large swipes. Let's see how that turns out. And it's so trippy and very relaxing to make digital fluid pours. And that's starting to show. That's kind of what I was looking for. Some of the teal, which is kind of some accent tans and whites. More the teal and black background. And like I said, you don't have to follow along with these exactly, it's just to kind of give you an idea, and then you can go and play with all the filters. I think they have some pretty cool ones. Crystallize, where you can make it look like stained glass. Which is pretty cool. And a beehive pattern. squares, you can do dots. This program's kind of neat. Like I said, you can, even though they're kind of preset filters, you can kind of take them and create some pretty interesting abstract art and kind of play with it further than what they were intended for, which is kind of cool. Let's see what that polar coordinates look like. That one's pretty trippy. Play with the swiped look today. I always tend to edit it further with a special pen, so that way it doesn't look too uniform. Or if you like how it looks here, you can always just leave it as well. I kind of like the look of where it looks like it's been kind of tilted every which way, the canvas. But if you were doing kind of, you like the acrylic pours where they take the paper towel and swipe it over top and it creates the interesting lace patterns and cells. This is a great template to use. And then you can overlay your lace cells over top, which is pretty fun. Like so. Nice thing with using the filters is it gives you a base to work with, and then you can use the special pen to kind of just do minor adjustments. And so you can always use the special pen from the very beginning and drag it around, but I find it's not as smooth as Procreate's liquify brush. Now it could be because of the size of the canvas that I'm using is quite large and it's having issues rendering. But so I want to use the smaller canvas size. You'll have to let me know if it's smooth or if it moves any easier for you. But I find it doesn't move the quickest, so it's always a little easier just to get the base down with the filters, and then you can kind of really play with it in little tiny movements with the special pen. That's starting to look pretty interesting. As I once you have a shape you like, then we're going to go back into our brushes and we're going to pick, and it's going to be all the way at the bottom. And this one, we're going to be working with the brush Clouds Reel, which is right there. Just about, I think about 75% of the way down. And then expanded cells is the other technique we're going to be using to create our marbled cells, which I have another tutorial up on my playlist of how to do expand bubble cells as well and expansion cells, so check that out. But once you have your Clouds Reel brush picked, then we're going to, I like to stick with the color palette I already have, but we'll also kind of do some abstract. I'll alternate colors as well to kind of see what it looks like to get the idea. So we'll start with some white. You kind of pick a place where you want to start with some cells. I'll zoom in so we can see, kind of like this area here, this kind of black area. So again, don't forget to always check your settings, make sure you have no limitations on your brush. On mine it has limitation of 510, so we're just going to swipe it all the way to the right. So we have a maximum brush size with no limitations, which will make things easier. And then the goal with these, we're trying to use the kind of the translucent stamp pattern of those clouds to create the marble effect. So I want to layer colors over top and stamp them to kind of get that pattern. So when we make our expand bubble cells and then revert them, it's going to create that marble texture on the inside. And the reason why I like to use the same colors as the color palette, because then it kind of has a similar feel to the paint that's already around it as well. And then once you have kind of a pattern you like, you can always do your flyaway stamps like so and get those put into place. And overlap those colors so you get different color variations. Like so. Kind of something like that. And then we're going to be going back into our special pen and using the expand option and dropping our canvas down just a bit. Like so. And so you can make very large cells or you can make some smaller cells. Probably going to do about medium. Like so. And we're just going to start expanding out those stamped clouds that we made into little jelly bean shapes. You can shrink it down and do some smaller jelly beans on the inside. And do the little flyaways. And so these flyaways are quite large, but then you can also shrink it down even further and do the really tiny kind of torch bubble cells as well. But I have a brush that I like to use those for. So once you kind of have your cells like you like, I'll zoom right in here so we can see what we're doing. And then you're going to hit the revert icon off to the right here. It kind of looks like a little eraser. And shrink our brush down just a little bit. And we're going to drag ever so slightly in the middle. And just revert it just a little bit. It gives such an interesting, I'll zoom right in. It gives such an interesting texture. Just something a little different than just the harsh color when you're doing the revert cells. It's a bit of a softer look too. This is just a different technique. You don't have to use them, or you can use the several different techniques with each other and overlap the different styles. It's just so interesting how just a little bit of cloud pattern creates such an interesting marbled effect. And sometimes if the cloud pattern was very light, then we kind of get those multi-bubble cells kind of popping through as well. Just interesting. And then you can play with the edges too. You don't have to, you can kind of shrink those edges if the bubbles were just kind of emerging. You don't have to stay within those lines. Give it that oblong shape. Like so. It's just so different. It comes up with some pretty interesting patterns. And with our flyaway ones as well, you can shrink those edges in to make them interesting, weird little shapes, or like they're just emerging from the paint and not quite fully formed yet. So the ideas you can have with this are literally endless. You can do it for as little, as long as you like. Because I find these are amazing to just kind of let the brain turn off and let that flow state kind of go and relax after a long day of work or school or studying or bad day, good day. Just kind of get those creative juices going. Like I said, just create such an interesting pattern. I said those ones are quite small. You can also do them a little bit larger too, depending on your canvas size and what you're looking for. Go back into that white. And I'll do some bigger guys over here. Actually, I'll do some darker ones over this pattern. Start with a bit of darker base and bring in a bit of that tan. And a bit of the blue. So when you zoom in, you kind of forget the kind of size of your canvas you're working with. So if you stay zoomed out a bit, it kind of makes it a little easier doing those expand cells and kind of getting the shape that you want. If you want them a bit bigger, you can do some really big guys. Like so. And kind of have them fade into the smaller ones. Nice thing with the bigger guys is when you zoom in and you hit the revert, you'll see that marbled pattern a little more clearly, which is so cool. This kind of gives it like a stamped ink kind of feel. Like so. Which is pretty cool. You can see those a little bit better. Got your small ones and your large ones. And then you can also, you don't have to stick with your color palette. You can also do the complete opposite color. So if we have our teal here, so we go the other side and kind of do a nice bright reddish orange. And do some really abstract, contrasting colors. I'll lay down a bit of darker base. And then we'll go back into that red. Stamp the red. If you want to bring back in a little bit of that color, you can bring a tiny bit of that teal back in. A little bit of white. Like so. And then if you lost a bit of your red, you can always layer it back over top. And then we're going to go into our special pen and expand. Start making those expand bubbles. And I said, you don't have to drag it back and forth. You can hold it and it will slowly expand out. I just find just moving it back and forth kind of helps move it along a little faster because it does move a little slowly. So to make sure these tutorials aren't too long, I move my brush back or my pencil back and forth. But when you're creating them, if you want to choose to hold it and see how it works and get the feel of how the special pen works, you can definitely take your time. So this is just to kind of give you an idea of how the cells work and how to use the technique, and then you guys can play with it and perfect it and play with your own cells. Those are pretty trippy on their own as expanded bubble cells. Now we're going to hit that revert icon again, and let's see what these marble cells kind of look like. Such an interesting pattern. It's like magic, watching what it comes up with. And seeing the colors bleed back into each other. It's very mesmerizing. So cool. Almost reminds me of human blood cells. The blue and the oxygenated blood turning into red blood cells, I think. Don't quote me on my biology. And play with those edges a little bit. You can always use the drag tool as well. And you can make them a little more oblong shaped. Like so. And that's so cool. And then you can further edit them if you like, or if you like how it looks there, you can leave them like so. Or if you want, you can go back into your filters And you can kind of put a wave over everything if you want to kind of make it ripple a little bit, or you can take your ripple filter and turn your distortion rate down. Sorry, that's my dog. You itchy thing? And play with the wingdings to get that ripple. And bring down your radius, and then you can just place it over top. And just give them kind of a slight distortion. Kind of like they were still moving, and we've got an interesting still image of them still actively rippled and popping through. And you can pull out those, or shorten those wingdings a little, and your distortion, and place a few just on the outside, so that way it looks like it's fading out, like so. And those are kind of the basic steps on how to make marbled cells. And you can kind of play with any of the brushes. I just like the Clouds Reel because it kind of makes a similar pattern as to the ones I make on Procreate, and it's a little easier to use, but you can literally use any of the brushes that kind of have that stamped kind of look and kind of clouds or different kind of patterns. Like another one I was playing with earlier, trying to think here. I think I was playing with a lot of the fluffy watercolor brushes and some of the watercolor reel brushes as well, because they kind of have that same kind of dark and light pattern to the stamp of them. So I like to use Clouds Reel, but you can kind of use whatever brush you like and kind of play with it and see how it turns into marbled cells, which is kind of cool. And yeah. And that's how you create marbled cells on IbisPaint. And like I said, if you guys recreate any of the art, definitely tag me, follow me on my socials so I can add you guys to my store and we can grow the digital acrylic pour family and see everybody's cool artwork that they come up with. And stay tuned for more tutorials, and thanks for watching. Bye!